Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Finale, and this is Real Estate Talk TGIF episode, believe it or not, 334. This is 330 weeks in a row that we've been doing this wonderful broadcast with fantastic people, and today is no different than any other. Well, we have Ralph DiBugnara, who is a financial genius, financial specialist, mortgage guy, entrepreneur, philanthropist, all different kinds of things. Ralph, thanks so much for being on today.
Thanks for having me, Dave. It's good. It's good to be back. It's been a while, but it's good to be back on again.
It's been over 2 years. You were on episode 213 back in July of 22. But I'm excited to have you here. Talk about what's going on, the difference and changes and stuff that's going on in the real estate market, interest rates, all kinds of fun stuff. What's going to affect what's going to happen? But before we get started, we've got to go to the video. Hit it, Nelson.
Real estate agents, are you looking to acquire clients consistently to grow your business and income for a great lifestyle? Well, this is Dave Finale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and the Modern Agent team.
Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Dave Finale again, Real Estate Talk TGIF, and we've got the new background. We've got a few things we got to change on the promo we start with, but then again, we are here. We're here with Ralph DiBugnara, and Ralph, just to talk a little bit, I mentioned quickly. You're a successful serial entrepreneur, real estate expert, Wall Street Journal best-selling author of The Growth Trap. After growing up struggling financially, you knew what you wanted to do for yourself, and that was to you didn't want I'm reading, but so I'm not reading that well, am I?
No, I just wanted to have a different life for myself than I had envisioned myself, because I was, my journey really is that I wasn't a good student. I wasn't good in school. So I didn't have anything early on that told me I could be anything. So I think I was just really looking for an outlet where I could become something, and mortgages and real estate became that thing originally.
So you're senior vice president of New American Funding. You're also the president, I believe, if I'm right. I'm sorry. Home qualified. Sorry about this little screw up on my part.
No, that's okay. We know each other, so I know you know these things, but the details.
So the question is, man, you decided you wanted something different yourself. But you started somewhere. You had trials and tribulations. Talk to me about your journey in business, and in all the different things that you decided you wanted to do and what you do now.
Yeah. So, it's funny, as you kind of get older, and my kids are young, and just my journey through real estate is like this all the time, right? It always changes. It's changing now. But, my initial entry into it was I graduated college kind of by the skin of my teeth, just doing the basics and getting at it. I had a business degree, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then I ended up in real estate because I was about to take a job with Enterprise Rent-A-Car, renting cars. And my friend who had just gotten out of the military was in mortgages and said, hey, why don't you come try this? So I got into mortgage sales around 2001, and it was right after the .com bubble burst. Right. So there were really no jobs except sales jobs. I was selling copiers door to door for Canon, and I that was my first job in New York City, and I hated it. I was going to enter the Enterprise Rent-A-Car training program, because that was really all that was available. There was not jobs. And my friend said, hey, come into mortgages. And I got in at a really good time where rates were the lowest they had ever been, which was 6%, which we've seen a lot lower than that now.
Yes. Yeah, right. Exactly.
And I kind of, I got in, and I was able to buy a house because of that very, very young. At the age of, I believe 23, I bought my first house with my brother. And then I rode that wave until about 2008, when everything went to hell and my life went to hell with it. And then I got back in. I lost all my money. I lost my houses. I started building it again, and differently every single time. But I think the biggest thing I will say about my journey is that if you're consistently trying to grow, whether it's to grow financially or personally or whatever, almost every part of it is going to be hard. And I've realized that now that I'm in I'm growing still, and it's not the same hard as it was when I was 22. But it's hard in a different way because I'm not complacent. I want to grow. I think the only way for it not to be hard in life for anybody is to just kind of stay where you are and not look. I'm good with my job, and I'm good with just making this amount of money, and I'm good with expanding this much, and I'm just good. And if you do that, then life can be easy. But I think outside of that, it's always going to be hard. And I think it's kind of been hard throughout for me because I'm constantly trying to grow.
So I think what we're doing is we're talking about two different people here, right? We're talking about people that are okay with the job and they're good with it and the family's going along and there's nothing wrong with it at all.
Yeah. And
then there's the crazier segment or the different segment. Let's call it different rather than crazy or nutty or whatever. That, A, we might never be satisfied. B, we're always working on that next thing. And before we came on, I had mentioned to you one of my biggest problems that I've kind of changed along with my own personal journey is that when I reached a goal, it kind of was the bad thing for me because I didn't have anything set to go next. Yep. So one of the things I heard recently that I'm sure we've all heard a lot is, get really comfortable being uncomfortable all of the time. I heard it from I heard it from an old basketball coach today at the gym who was talking to somebody about his journey. And he just happened to say is I've been more successful having my kids, treating them and telling them how they have to be uncomfortable all the time. And people say, well, that's not fun. Not fun being uncomfortable. But isn't it fun as you say, okay, what's next, right? Talk to me about that and how that's pushed you forward.
Yeah, you're right on the money, right? I think whenever I accomplish a goal, I don't ever relish in the accolades of it or the praise of it or whatever it is, because in my brain, it's over. It's in the past, right? And what, if I don't continue to do this or continue to grow, then I'll never receive that again. And although it feels good, I really want to get to the next goal. So I think that I'm always consistently looking for the next thing, like you just said. And that really, the problems I'll give you this week, right? Because this is a good week to talk about it. The problems I had this week, most people are like, it's overwhelming, it's this, it's that. And it is, it 100% is, but they're problems that I would have prayed for 15 years ago, right? I had problems on 5 different properties, but somebody would have told me 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you have all these properties that are worth this much money, I would have gladly taken those problems, right? So I think that, so now it's like, all right, where am I going to graduate to next? When people ask me about real estate, and that's a good way to kind of segment to it, it's that, well, where are you going in real estate right now? Well, I feel like I've graduated to a different level. I need a new challenge. And I'm consolidating some of my smaller multifamily properties or Airbnb properties, and I'm working on bigger projects now. I want to have 15 to 20 unit buildings. I want to develop on a larger scale. And that's what I'm working on now because I've graduated to that. The other stuff doesn't seem exciting anymore. It's gotten old. It's gotten too tedious because I don't feel like I'm making enough money to justify the time I'm putting to it. So now I'm trying to move to a different project, but I'm always trying to graduate because I feel like if you need a challenge and you should always be challenging yourself, then automatically you're always going to be looking for what the next thing is.
Yeah. So absolutely. And that's what drives you and what drives a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there that, they need that initial, they want that initial, like you mentioned 2008, lost it all, started rebuilding it. So I want to say ask one question that I've never asked people because the story of people on this broadcast of saying they lost it all, then they gained it back. What made you want to keep going in real estate rather than giving up when you lost it all in 2008?
Yeah. I can point to 2 things right now, and I probably couldn't answer this question until recently. I think the fear of failure within myself and the perception of me failing, one, and secondly, the non-fear of making mistakes. I think the way I was raised by my parents, I don't have a fear of making mistakes. They disciplined us, but they never, it was never over the top when we made mistakes. We were really allowed to make mistakes and continue on with life without like a ridiculous amount of consequences. So I think I didn't have a fear of making mistakes. Right. So the failure bothered me a lot, but it didn't stop me. So I think that was really the biggest thing. Like, yeah, I'm not going to let the real estate business or the mortgage business beat me. Yeah, it knocked me down, but I'm going to get back up and do it differently next time so I don't fail again. So I think that's really where I could say I continued in this business. And also, Dave, to be completely honest, there was fear of having to do something else. At 27, 28 years old, when that stuff happened to me, my identity was this business. It was the only thing I had ever truly found success at. So I think there was a lot of fear for me of pivoting to something else because I only identified as that person.
Right. So, all right. So you get back into it. Now you just said that there's bigger and better challenges for you. So there's that person out there that wants to be that investor. There's people. I talk to them all the time as new real estate agents. Well, I want to be an investor, so I figured I'd get my real estate license. To me, that sounds an alarm that they want me to spend a lot of time helping them learn the real estate business, but they don't want to be realtors. But what about that true person that really wants to be an investor? Is there a place that they should start? How did you start and take it forward?
Yeah, so I started not the smart way. Like, I didn't have somebody like you, which I wish I had. I didn't start with a mentor. My father owned a 2-family house in Brooklyn. Where we lived in, like, probably 800-900 square feet if I look back on it now. And that's where I grew up in. And then he bought a bigger house when he sold that house. But that was my baseline. I was like, all right, my father bought an income producing property. He made enough money on it to sell it and buy something else. So that was really the only guidelines I had.
Right.
I started really trial and error, and I made a lot of mistakes. And my first mistakes were, I bought a good property, myself and my brother, that we had a shared expense. It was great. It didn't cost us that much money. It was a really good start. And I didn't want to live in Staten Island anymore. I wanted to live in Manhattan. So we sold it. And I put that money into properties into Florida at the time, which were, you could flip properties really, really quick in the condo market. So I was doing that and making a little bit of money here and there, but I had no track record doing it. I had nobody guiding me that had done it successfully. I didn't understand the market. So when the market crashed, I kind of lost everything because I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't asking enough questions. So I didn't do it in a smart way. When I went about it a second time, I started reading a lot. I started asking people a lot of questions. I started asking people who had built portfolios, like how you did it and where would you start if you did it again. And that really is what helped me the second time around. And, like right now, even in a market it's good where we live in New York and New Jersey, but it's not good everywhere.
Right.
I have really mostly very, very good properties because I asked a lot of questions and I didn't try to invent something new. I just kind of went what was tried and tested and true.
So that was basically, multifamily properties, 2 families, 3 families, 4 families.
Yep.
And you also mentioned one of the things that people get into really, really heavy duty has changed a lot is the Airbnb market.
Yep.
Right. How has that changed over the past 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, if that was your strategy and your only strategy for the last 2 years, then you're probably out of business. The only thing that's helped me survive through because don't let anybody fool you, and I don't care what Airbnb results they produce, because I own Airbnb properties in 6 states, so I feel like I can speak from a place of experience. The market is down, inflation is up, costs are up, traveling is down overall. Traveling costs are expensive. People are not renting in 2024 and 2023 like they were in 2019, 2020, 2021. So those houses, I'm really happily breaking even on most of them at this point now, but I'm not really making money there. My multifamily properties are what's helping me survive. Now, if you asked me the same question in 2020 and 2021, I was like, I'm killing it on Airbnb.
Right.
Yeah, I'm making money on the multifamilies, but it's just a small amount of money. I'm really making much bigger cap rates on my Airbnb properties. It's flipped completely. So, those properties are, and that's where I have to be smart, right? So like for instance, I'm selling a property right now in Miami. I just sold a property last year in Ocala, Florida. I have to be smart enough not to hold on for no reason, but not to fire sale either. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm analyzing what properties I think will be good over the next 3 years and what markets may be good. And I'm trying to hold on to those properties. And the other ones, I'm taking with the equity I have and hopefully what profit I have and moving into something else.
That makes a lot of sense. As time moves on, things are changing, but there's a lot of different ways to make money. But still, for that initial investor, we're still looking at small multifamily properties to start it and to keep going. And if you have any skills at all, is to do as much yourself as you possibly can.
Yeah,
right?
And Dave, and to your point, my small residential multifamily properties are fine. They have repairs and they're older houses and they have repairs, but overall they're profitable every single month. I collect. It's good. It's steady. It's consistent. It's a really, really great foundation for anything else I want to do, because those properties I won't sell. I'll hold on to them for as long as I possibly can. And hopefully my children will take them over at some point, but they're income producing. So my money is safe there. Whereas in some of the other stuff, it's at risk.
Right. So that's really always the best thing for me as a property owner for many, many years. The reason I got out of it is I just didn't want to be a landlord anymore. So I just, divested of that and went into other things and did stuff for myself and made an investment that way.
Yep.
So as we talk about those investments, let's segue into the current real estate market, or let's go back 12 months, fast forward to today. What has been the significant factors in the real estate market over the last 12 months? Now let's remember that we still have multiple offers, shit flying off the shelves at much higher than asking. I saw one yesterday go for a crazy number that I don't think will ever, if they had to sell it tomorrow, couldn't even get close to that number.
Yeah.
What do you think about that idea? Like, for instance, let's do a scenario here, right? Listed at 400, sold for 550.
Yeah. So I think right now, from an investment standpoint, right, and I'll talk about owner occupied too.
Sure.
I'm having a hard time making sense of anything, because to buy something and put 20% down, right, and I'll put 20% down on an investment property, but even putting 20% down, I can't make sense of the payment compared to what the rent is right now.
Exactly.
And so I understand that the property is worth $950,000 in an area where I paid $550 in 2019 or 2018. I get it, but I can't make sense of the rent. So like between tax, first of all, most taxes have reassessed at this point on these properties because the value is up, right? So property taxes are reassessing. Homeowners insurance is the highest that I've ever experienced it as far as the rates go, as far as the percentage of the rates. Interest rates are higher. So I don't painting a blank picture, but something has to give, right? So I think interest rates coming down at some point will give, and that'll create a lot more opportunities again when interest rates come down. And I think insurance costs will come down at some point too. I think that's something that will reduce. But right now, if you want to buy a house, I believe that you have to buy it with the thought process of, hey, in the future, I'm going to be able to save money here, here, and here, and I'll be able to reduce my cost. But for the time being, I may lose money or break even on this house as an investment. And I just think that that's how you have to look at things. And for somebody who wants to buy a house to live in, you got to find ways to find value. And I think the only two value areas I'm seeing I see three value areas right now. If you're willing to completely gut and rehab, you can find some kind of value, right? If you're willing to look in the condo market, they're still building condos all over the place. I think that there's inventory in the condo market and you can find value there. And I think the second home market, people who are suffering are selling their second homes. And I think you can find some values there. But outside of that, I don't see a lot of value in today's market.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? And we look at a lot of different things. I mean, you mentioned a 6% interest rate. I will tell you, I know I'm sound like an old fart when I say this, but back in '93, I think it was, I was very happy to get a construction takeout at 7.5.
Yeah, you're right.
So yeah. I mean, I know those are years ago, and everybody's complaining about interest rates, but interest rates have fluctuated crazily over the past few months. Talk to me about where we're at today and what we need to look at today as far as interest rates.
Yeah. I think, we'll start with September. Rates had come down a lot in September, and anticipating the Fed cutting rates, and they cut 50 basis points, which I personally feel like was unnecessary. And I feel like it's hurt them over the last 30 days because people were expecting a 25 basis point cut as the first cut. They cut 50 basis points. In doing that, people were anticipating, okay, well, they see something coming. But what happened in the last 30 days is we found out that inflation is cooling. It's not still going up. So that is positive. Unemployment is down, not up. And consumer spending is still kind of up in a lot of ways. And I think where we expected things to go with a 50 basis point rate cut, it hasn't happened. The opposite has happened. So now it's looking like, well, did you cut too much? Was it too soon? What are you going to do next time? So I think what I anticipate them adjusting to is now slow and steady, that they're going to either pause or cut 25 basis points each month for the next few months, pause some months, cut 25, but it'll be a slow reduction of interest rates now, where we were expecting an immediate hit where, okay, interest rates are going to be down in October and we're going to shoot to the moon. I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to see there'll be a reduction and it's going to come down, but it's going to take, I think, 3 to 6 months before you see anything significant as far as an interest rate cut. And by the way, I can't even guarantee that at this point because I don't know where the economy is going overall. And the election is always that piano hanging over our head, right? The election could really have a really big impact one way or the other. Historically, around election times, rates come down.
Right.
So, I'm anticipating some kind of rate reduction over the next couple of weeks, but I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to like super move the needle.
So, we before we came on the air, I mentioned gas prices, right? And I don't know if there's a relation for election or relation to prices and interest rates to before and after election, how things are going to change. But there's always this anticipatory feeling of, okay, so gas prices are now lower than they've been. Why? I don't know why. It's not, there's no volatility there. At least I don't see it. So is there a relation to interest rates, gas prices? It's a stupid question. I know.
No, I don't think it's stupid. I think it's a good question. I think that some of the, some of the gas prices coming down, I think that was, as costs come down, gas prices come down, and oil's really cheap right now, but oil may be a good place to put your money. I think people haven't been investing in oil and the money hasn't been going there because they don't know what's going to go on with it. So I think that's impacting it. But then you'll hear people like Warren Buffett or somebody who knows a lot is like, how now's the time to invest in oil because it's going to shoot to the moon. So it's a tough answer, but I think it correlates to consumer sentiment around the election, which impacts rates. Like if there was a report that came out through Redfin the other day that said 23% of people are waiting to see who wins the election before they even consider buying a home again. And there was like another 30% that was still waiting for rates to drop. So that's over 50% of the market that's sitting on the sidelines right now, waiting to see what's going to happen. So, and by the way, if Harris wins, there'll be a group that says, okay, I'm ready to buy. And there'll be a group that says, hey, I'm now not buying. You know what I mean? If Trump wins, it'll be the same way, one way or the other. So I don't necessarily think whoever wins presidency is going to necessarily make one major change one way or the other. The only thing I will say is Kamala Harris has spoken a lot more about real estate than Trump has so far. And this is my interpretation. I don't have any knowledge of anything. Right. She's spoken a lot about housing affordability. He hasn't spoken a lot at all, except how he's going to fix the economy. From their track records, I feel like he believes that if we fix inflation, if we get interest rates down, everything will fix itself. She's looking at it as, hey, houses are so unaffordable right now, we have to address it. So they're kind of looking at it in two completely different ways. And, I think his view is more historically accurate. And her view is kind of going into the great unknown a little bit because she's speaking of putting another pretty large grant into play, the Housing Affordability Act, which is going to be a $25,000 down payment assistance program that's going to give people $25,000 to buy homes. I'm not saying she's wrong. I'm saying that is a little scary to me to add more money into this market, in a market where we already don't have enough homes.
So I think the most important thing for people to hear out of this discussion is basically that an election is going to affect only those that are positive with the person getting elected.
You're 100% right. Yes, exactly. You're 100% right. It's whatever consumer sentiment is attached to that presidential candidate, that's who it's going to impact. And the other half, it's not going to. They're going to go the opposite way.
Right.
So, you're right.
But
you're
here's one thing I do know. I know that if you want to buy a house, you have to buy a house, you have to sell a house, you're going to fucking do it.
You're 1,000% right.
Right? And that's been the whole thing is like, with the pandemic, one of the things I said is what you're going to find is people that love their houses and people that hate their houses, or people hate who they're sharing their houses with, right? Which happened, right? So that's why, the best thing from the pandemic came for Home Depot and Lowe's, because they did really, really well because people realized what they wanted to fix in their houses or that they wanted to fix and sell and get the hell out. So, there's a lot of ways to look at it. But as I said, one thing I do know is if you want to move or you have to move, you're going to.
Yeah. And the other thing that me and you have experienced throughout our whole entire careers and our lives is housing moves the economy of this country more than any other thing in this economy. And every person you speak to, from your landscaper to your contractor to everything is impacted by the housing market. Everybody's everything. So so to fix what's going on with a lot of the problems we're having, you have to have a strong housing market. So no matter who gets into office, this is my message to everybody who's worried. No matter who gets into office, they're going to have to address it in one way or the other because you need it for our economy. So, that's where I'm not fearful because it has to be addressed. But at the same time, you're right. It's going to be, even if whoever wins the election, and what have we seen over the last few elections? What is it? 53-47 or 52-48. It's going to be close. It's essentially 50-50. So the country is split no matter what.
Yeah. And here's the interesting thing and the one thing about this election that's a little bit different is that they're finally realizing that I've been saying for years that real estate makes the world go round.
Definitely.
There's absolutely no question. I mean, just think about it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I recently sold and bought a home. I know how much money I spent just to move and to get into it, paint the house, the things I got. Amazon's my best friend. We all know that, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, think about all of that and how much money you spend. And I didn't spend a lot comparatively. But most people, I mean, I think the number a few years ago was $80,000 every time a house sells.
Yeah.
It goes into the economy. I know we're selling less homes this year in 24 than ever. We'll be like somewhere in over 3 million, somewhere where typically it's 5 to 6.
Yeah,
right?
and you're right. You make a great point. It's the selling of the houses that's the problem. That we aren't selling enough houses.
Right.
Impacts everything so much. And part of that is you can't, since 2011, since 2008, really, we're at over a 3 million home deficit every single year of the homes that need to be built to what we're actually
built. And that's where the problem is.
Yeah, that's where the problem lies. I had a phone call with my father this morning. It's interesting. He's like, hey, I'm reading a lot of things that a lot of people are moving to Yonkers. And that wasn't an area that was popular in New York. It's somebody, whoever knows what that is. And I said to him, I was like, yeah, because there's space to build in places there. There's space to rehab and rehabilitate homes. So now more people are moving there, just like Orange County in New York, just like Sussex County in New Jersey, just like Ocean County in New Jersey. Any place that there's land where you can actually build something, people are going to move to because it's more affordable if they can actually build. It creates a real economy around it. So that's still our biggest issue. We're not building enough homes. We're not selling enough homes. And that's our biggest issue, I think, in general, that has to be addressed.
Yeah. It's like this endless cycle of getting this stuff built, and building the homes is the issue because new homes will also take care of resale homes as well. Right. And that's the big thing.
Yeah. And there was something that happened I guess it's over a year ago now, that kind of it was big news at the time, but I don't want to say it got swept under the rug, but it wasn't really focused on. And when a couple of the banks failed last year, which was Silicon Valley and I believe New York Community Bank, it didn't seem like a big deal because they weren't Main Street banks. Not a million people were impacted by it. What people didn't see behind the scenes is that they essentially gave those banks to Chase. They said, hey, the FDIC came in and said, hey, we don't trust these guys to run their banks anymore. We're going to give them to you because we know you have the balance sheet. We're going to give it to you for almost nothing. And we're going to protect you on anything that defaults for the next 7 years. So they essentially bailed those banks out and then gave them the Chase to manage. But it kind of was very, very quiet. But what happened with that was all the smaller community commercial banks that were lending to people who build homes stopped lending. They don't have the money to lend anymore, so they're building less. So all the financing that was available for these people who were either had new projects coming or in the middle of projects has dried up. So now we're building even less homes than we were before. And it was something that was a major occurrence in the economy, but it was kind of kept at a place where people were calm about it because they didn't realize what was going on. But I really feel like it's had a huge impact on what's happened in the last 18 months.
I think over the years, when you see banks, local banks being taken over, and the local banks were usually the ones that were lending to that small builder or that small investor, right? Because it was easier, that you had a friendly relationship. I will tell you that I remember the days of walking into a bank and say, hey, I need $20,000 for something, or I need $200,000. Sure, we'll have it for you tomorrow. I remember those days, and those days don't happen anymore. And it's a correlation between it's like an analogy or an example of what's happened with what you just said, right? So you've got these other banks that aren't being as successful, being taken over by the bigger guys, and you're not seeing the little stuff of the little builder coming along, which I think is vital
Yeah.
to our economy.
No, they've been pushed out of the market a little bit right now. So you're right. So you only have major builders, and major builders are only building in places that have a lot of room to build, like Las Vegas, like like Florida, like Tennessee. They're building in these major metropolises that have a lot of space, and now the affordability of living there has gone way up.
Crazy. Right.
So it's hard. That's what's making it really difficult.
Yeah. So all right. So let's move into the local or the residential market. Let's talk about the residential market. And we talk about interest rates. We talk a little bit about real estate, a little bit about the real estate market. Interest rates, volatile, not changing back and forth. What about the different ways to buy a house? Talk to me about the different, you call them products, right? As a mortgage pro, there's different products there's a 20% down conventional, right? What else? Is there something that people should know about that? Or is there something that's more advantageous for someone to do today?
Yeah, so I think there's two things out there right now that stick out in my brain that are definitely something you should educate yourself on. And one's a really obvious one. It's all the down payment assistance programs that have been made available over the last 24 months. And every state, every metropolis, every city has something. And most major lenders have down payment assistance programs of their own. I work at New American Funding. We have our own down payment assistance program that's very comparable to most people. And you're going to get anywhere between $7,000 and $10,000 in down payment assistance in these programs towards your down payment or your closing costs or something. And by the way, most people qualify for these loans. I would say the majority of people qualify for these down payment assistance. So that's great. The second thing I think it's very, very important, depending on what you market, and the local market is definitely something that needs to be addressed with this, is New American Funding, as well as a few other lenders, have a cash offer product. And we call ours NAF Cash. But essentially what that is allowing you to do is, if you qualify for conventional or VA financing, it doesn't apply to FHA because FHA has a flipping rule. But if you qualify for conventional VA financing, the bank will buy the property for you cash and sell it back to you with a mortgage. So essentially what we're doing is we're closing on the property. We're as the bank buying the property. We're showing proof of funds for somebody which you have to get qualified for the mortgage. If somebody applies, they qualify for conventional financing. We say, okay, great. Now you qualify for our cash product. We're going to make a cash offer. We're going to allow the real estate agents to make a cash offer on this home for you on our behalf. We're going to show them a bank statement that shows proof of funds that we can buy the property cash. We're going to buy the property. We're going to close on the property. We're going to rent it back to you until you're ready to close on the property. So that's what we're offering, and a few other banks are offering as well. And I think that's very powerful if you're in any kind of market where there's bidding wars or competition. If you can make a cash offer, it kind of pushes you to the front of the line.
Okay, so let's make sure that we understand this. So it's a cash product where the mortgage company, the bank, is actually buying the property.
Yep.
You say you'll rent it to us until you're ready to get the mortgage. But if you're ready right now, how does that work? Is it the same thing?
Yeah. So it depends on how much time you have to close, right? So let's say, hey, I made a cash offer, but I can get conventional financing, and they're giving me 30 days to close. So I'll just go get the conventional loan. Then great, then do that. You may come into a buyer who's, hey, you got to close in 7 days. Well, there's no way I'm going to be able to close in 7 days. I have to have this done. I have to have that done. I can't close that quickly. And that's where we can come in and say, hey, we'll make a cash offer. We'll close in 7 days for you and go buy the property as long as you qualify. So I think that's where it's advantageous. If you have time to close, you're better off just taking your own financing and not going through 2 transactions, because there is a fee, of course, associated with it. So you're going to pay. It's not going to be a ridiculous amount, but you're going to pay more in closing costs if you do 2 transactions than if you do 1. So if you can do financing on your own, then great. But if you need something and you need to make it aggressive, and this is your dream home and you have to make it happen, then make a cash offer and go from there.
So are there products out there that you can work with a bank, a mortgage company that would call that your offer cash?
Yeah. So this is really that product. I mean,
this is that product. Okay.
Yeah, because you're being qualified for both loans. You're being qualified for the cash program, and you're being qualified for a traditional mortgage, and we're going to give you a commitment letter on both. So it's both. You're gonna buy it, but you're really you're making a cash offer, but you really can just do the financing and go get the mortgage.
All right, and the time is a lot quicker to get it done.
Correct.
Right. All right, great. So we're talking about that program. What else is out there? And what are we looking at as far as interest rates are concerned? Are we looking at big changes? I know we talked about it briefly earlier.
Yep.
Is there, I mean, what is going to move the market? Is there anything that's going to move the market aside from interest rates, or is the interest rate going to be related to inventory as well?
So, so that's a good question. I think that what's mostly going to impact it now is confidence that inflation is cooling down and that the Fed is going to continue to lower the borrowing rate of funds. I think if there's confidence that they're doing that, and that may come the next week, right? When they meet again, are they going to lower another 25 basis points? Or in November, are they going to lower, they're going to continue to lower, right? Whenever the next meeting is. So I think that's the first thing. If they continue to lower, then they feel because if they continue to lower, they feel comfortable making a regular housing market again basically flourish. So I think that's the first thing. I think secondly, whoever gets elected, what their narrative is after they get into office on the economy, more the economy than housing. Hey, this is ridiculous. Taxes are too high. Insurance is too high. Interest rates are too high. We're going to work on programs to lower that stuff. If that happens, investor sentiment will change. They will start lowering interest rates even further. So I think those are the two things we're really looking for. They're going to move the needle. Right now, rates are for a 30-year fix are around 7% again. I think you can anticipate before the end of the year that they'll come down between 1/4 and 3/8%, but nothing significant above that right now.
All right. So not going to be much change there. So talk to me more about the market itself. I mean, a lot of people will still ask, when's the market going to crash? My personal opinion is that we didn't see a real estate crash. We kind of saw a money crash.
1,000, you hit on the money. No market can completely crash. Maybe you'll have a slight reduction unless there's and you like we saw in 2007, right? Unless there's an excessive amount of homes for sale that aren't being bought. So unless there's an excessive amount of supply and not enough demand, then you can see a crash. Right now, we could lose 20% of the demand and you still would have more than enough to meet the supply. So it's really, really simple. To me, it's simple math. It's supply and demand, right?
Yeah.
So until that changes, which is not, we couldn't get out of this deficit if they gave us $100 billion, you couldn't get out of it right now. It's going to take time. It's really going to take time. So I don't think you're going to see any kind of huge housing reduction, 5% maybe. That would be really significant. But outside of that, I think this is the market today is what you're going to see on a go forward for a long period of time.
So we're not talking about a crash. I never thought there would be this time. But as I said, I want to rewind a little bit to something I said earlier was about this house that's on the market at 400 and sells for 550. Should there be, caution with something like that? Should there be caution with something that's listed for this, that's comped out at that number, and all of a sudden, there's all these, there's 20 offers and it's going to go for 150 more. Now we're talking about close to 40% over asking.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And is that how much risk is involved there? Several questions, right? How much risk is involved? 2, how does a loan officer, mortgage professional look at it? And of course, the one thing that I'll always say is, will it appraise?
Yeah. I guess I would say conservative real estate investor at this point, that scares me. It really scares me to overpay for something by that much. So I think when it comes down to it, what you really have to consider in that situation is, you said appraisals, right? Yeah, for sure. What are the houses in the area selling for? Is this really consistent and average for the area? I think that's the first thing I'm looking at. The second thing I'm looking at is, what is my budget? I'm going to stick to my budget no matter what. I'm not going to go above my budget. So if you're a buyer of a home, you have a budget, you have to have a drop dead number that you're not going to go above no matter what as far as your monthly expenses. And the third thing is, what's my plan for the house? Do I need to move in a year, or am I not going to move for 10 years, right? And I think that's the most important thing. Because if I have a long-term plan, then listen, maybe I'm paying 10% more than I should be paying, but I'll outrun that because I'm going to be in the house for 5 to 7 years. But if you don't have any kind of idea of how long you're going to live there and you're paying more, that's when you could get hurt.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's probably the most important thing that we have to look at is how long you're going to be there.
Yeah.
What kind of a house is this? Who's going to live there? What's the oddly enough, what's the utility of that house?
You're right. You're right.
You know?
Yeah, you're right.
So, I mean, so you look at this 40% over asking and you look at it, and I'm not looking to scare anybody, but I'm looking for people to be more cognizant of the fact what's going on. What about pricing today? I mean, so we look at what's home selling in the area, which is what you just said, right?
Yep.
Are we looking at comparables of what's sold? Are we also looking at competition? Because I believe a CMA means two things. It means comparative and it means competitive.
Yep.
Are you competitive in the market first? Talk to me a little bit about that and how that applies to loans, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that if as an agent, and you can understand this, and you talk to a million agents, right? If you price a house too high, I think you're just going to turn people off up front, and they're not going to walk in. If you price a house competitively, that they know it's competitive for the market, like in my brain, I always look, even though I haven't bought anything in a year, I always look. If it's competitively priced in my brain, I'm like, I have to go look at this. Why? Right? I saw a 5-family yesterday in Cliffside Park. That was priced at, I think, 1.8 million. That seemed really, really reasonable for the area for what it was. I called. Why? Oh, we already have 4 offers. Yeah, it was competitively priced, and everybody's asked the same question as I asked, right? Why is this being priced? And they just were trying to price it competitively to create bidding and to create competition, and that's what they did. So I think you always have to look at the competition, how it's being listed. In my opinion, if you're a seller and you're watching this, you are always better off pricing competitively than overpricing because you think you want to get to a dream. If you want to get to your dream number, then price it under or price it competitively because you got a much better shot if you do that.
Right, because it's just like, the more eyeballs you get on something, the more it makes sense. Is there a way that can backfire?
I really don't think so. I mean, I'm sure there is, but in my brain, this is my bottom number, and that's a really competitive number. Like if somebody came to me, like I would take this number. As long as you're pricing at that number, that you can walk away with that number. What I'm seeing way too much is people who bought houses 2 and 3 years ago, and be like, well, I have to make this margin on it. Well, house prices aren't growing the same way as they were growing 3 years ago. Like, be realistic. Is there a profit in there? Great. Let's be smart about how we're selling this, because if the house can't appraise, then you're really setting yourself up for failure. Because if your sale falls through because the house didn't appraise, as a realtor, as a seller, try having that conversation after the fact. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I want this much money, but the house can't appraise for that much. Like, that's not an easy conversation to have, and it puts a dark cloud on the house.
So let's hit 3 categories and your advice for the 3 categories. Let's start with the buyer. Okay. What's your advice as an expert in this business for buyers today? What should they be doing? What should they be looking at? Where should they be cautious? Where should they not be cautious?
Yeah, I think, first of all, you don't own any of the houses you're looking at. Don't fall in love with anything. It's not yours until you actually get the keys that day. So the perfect house, the perfect this, the perfect that, be conscious of what you're getting into. And I think you have to have a budget, and you have to be willing to stick to that budget no matter what. This is my top. I can't afford any more than this. I'm sticking to that. And this is my bottom line as far as how much I'm going to spend. I think those are really, really important things. I think you also have to have vision, because whatever house you're going to find at this point, it's going to be some kind of compromise. That compromise is going to be price. It's going to be neighborhood. It's going to be condition of the home. It's going to be commuting distance, something like that. So I think if you're going to buy a home today, understand that 99.9% of the time it's going to be some sort of compromise.
Okay, great. So we hit buyers, now hit sellers with the same question. What do they need to look at? How they need to be cautious, et cetera?
Yeah, I think realistically, first of all, you always want to be competitive in pricing in the market. This isn't a straight line up. You're never, just like stocks, you're never going to buy at the very bottom and sell at the very top. I think if you're getting a price that meets your goals as far as how much originally you wanted to make on your investment, and be realistic about that, then it's a good time to sell, right? And if you have a plan to where you're putting the money or where you're moving to, then great, then go for it. I think Maybe you get a home run, maybe you don't. Those stories are few and far between, if I'm being honest with you, because not every, as a seller, you're going to have to compromise.
Right.
Whether that's making repairs or compromising on price. I'm selling a house right now. Like, I had to compromise. You know what I mean? Like, I had to make some repairs. I had to some exceptions. Even in a good market, I still had to compromise. So like, it works both ways. Like, if you have a strong buyer that you feel comfortable selling the house to, then be prepared to make some compromises.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing is look at what you've got and what you have to do. I mean, look, there's a lot of people that live in homes that say they let shit go, right? Yep. Not that anything's big, but they let stuff go, but it could be important to other people.
You're right.
You know, as far as sellers and buyers are concerned, I want buyers to always think about one thing. I want them to think about tomorrow. And we talked about this. How long are they staying there? What are they compromising on when they're buying? Some people say, well, you know what? I don't mind that there's, like I'm on a main street, or I don't mind that it has this, but I want you to think about, will the person you're selling it to in 5 to 10 years care? That's important. It's a resale idea.
That is a great point. That is the best point. I'm going through this right now on a condo that's currently under litigation for somebody, a buyer, right? They're like, oh, I don't care about the litigation. We can get around it. Okay, but what if you have to sell that property in 2 years?
Right.
You're shrinking your pool of buyers by 70%. Are you okay with that? Is that a good investment? So, I think that from both sides of it, you're right. Will the next person care about that? And that's the same thing as repairs, right? If you're gonna make changes to your house, you should always be thinking about what's valuable to the next person.
Right.
Right. Like, I'm not going to do something that's completely outlandish that nobody's ever going to like unless I don't care.
Right. And I think the hardest thing for a lot of people when they're in their house and they've got some extra money that they want to put in their house, you're going to do things that are just for them.
Yep.
Right. That no one else is going to see value in.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? So don't spend $50,000 on installing a bar when the next people you might come in that don't even give a shit about it.
And
right?
And Dave, I've never actually built a custom house for myself. I never have. I built for other people, but never for myself. Every person that I have that's a friend or a colleague or whatever that's built a house for themselves always spends more money than they should have. Right. They always over-improve something, and unequivocally at the end of the process, they always said, I would never do this again. So so there you go. Right.
I did it. I mean, I'm more conservative now. For me, it's more about aesthetics and what it looks like. And I know I'm going to spend the money, right? Like I did some floors, I did some painted a little bit differently. One of the things that I thought was always funny when someone always had to have that jacuzzi tub.
Yeah.
Fast forward 5 years. When was the last time you used it? Oh, I don't think we ever did.
I had this conversation this week. I have a master bathroom with a stand-up shower and a jacuzzi. I've never gotten in the tub one time. Never once. So now they're saying like the new look is the large showers with the tubs inside them. And that's the new look. And I'm like, I would just like to have more space because I'm never going to use that. It's something I hang my clothes on. Like you're right. Like you had to have it, but just like I wanted a pool. I have a pool. It's nice. My kids hardly go in it. They hardly ever go in it.
So I want everybody to listen to exactly what we're saying. I'll give you 2 examples. I built a custom home for my house. I had this huge jacuzzi put in the master bathroom, right? I think in the many, many years we were there, we used it twice, right? Mm-hmm. I renovated a home that I just sold recently, and I did the bathroom. I had to redesign the entire bathroom. I gutted it. I put in this big whirlpool tub once in 12 years, right? So, I mean, think about that and think of other utility for stuff. Yes, every home does need a tub. I agree with that. Yeah. And that's something for future because anybody with kids is going to need that little tub. Anyway, okay. Yeah. So we hit buyers, we hit sellers. Talk to me about the cautious, or tell me about what investors should be looking for, whether small or large, and where they need to be, as I said, cautious, or where they can actually go for it.
I think as an investor, I would be looking. So it depends on what you're looking to do. If you're looking to flip homes, just make sure the profit margins are really there. I mean, I have people bring me flips every single week. Like, hey, this is a good flip. Okay, well, let's go through it. Right. How long is it really going to take? 6 months. All right, let's say 8 months. How much is it really going to cost? 100,000. All right, let's add 20% to that. What are the fees to sell it? What is the real profit margin? And is that profit margin worth the risk and worth your time? So that's the first, right? So for me, to make $30,000 over 6 months on a flip isn't worth it for me anymore. I'll just go work harder at my job for the next 6 months and make an extra $5,000 a month and go risk hundreds of thousands of dollars to make $30,000. Doesn't make sense, right? So is the profit margin there on flips. On long-term holds, are you buying in an area where you can either raise rent or rent is rising? I think is the thing I'm looking at most. And does the property have anything significant that's coming up that's going to be really, that wasn't expensive to fix 5 years ago, but it is expensive to fix now, right? So
Right.
I think those are the two things that I would really highly focus on. Where are rents going? And, you know, I'm buying an older house. The roof has got 5 years left on it. The plumbing is X, Y, and Z. And like, I'll give you an example. I bought a house in North Bergen, New Jersey 4 years ago. What I didn't know about North Bergen, and I have 2 properties there now, so I understand it a little better, is that the pipes are 100 years old in the street and they're clay. When they break, they really break. And by the way they built North Bergen is that, well, the pipes go through everybody's backyards like this. So if they break, you can't find anything. So a small plumbing leak on a property became a $50,000 job for me, where I had to close the street and everything else. And if I would have just asked more questions or did a city line inspection, which is like $200 to do, I would have known that and I wouldn't have bought the property. But hindsight is 2020, and it was an expensive lesson, but still a lesson, right? I just think know the area, know how old the area is, know if there's something that's in the city that's going to impact your long-term investment.
Yeah, and I don't want to add one thing to this. I mean, we talk about how long that fix is going to take before you flip. Talking about that, I know that the biggest problem there is scheduling.
Yeah.
And I know with my experience and what I've done with my homes and everything that I've done, I know that I can get it done twice as fast as anybody else can. Why? Because you just have to, there's things that we have that we've experienced.
Your experience. Yeah. You have experience.
We know how to get it done faster. And, you know, like when I moved into my home, I did in 9 days, but most people would have taken 49 days to do. Simply because I knew how to schedule it. I know how to get it done. I know where the material is, et cetera, and I got the right people, which is really important.
Yeah,
but anyway,
I mean, I spoke to you before about graduating, and I want to do bigger projects right now. I'm doing those projects with somebody who has experience doing them. I'm not going into a 10-unit building and trying to do it on my own. I would fail miserably financially. You know what I mean?
Right, and you can't afford to do that. I mean, you just can't throw money at shit. You've got to throw experience at shit.
Agreed.
You know, and that's the most important thing. Rob, I want to thank you so much for being on today. I mean, you know, we got this is your contact information. We have your Instagram up. Just quickly, next week on this same broadcast, number 335, we have Greg Harrelson, owner of Century 21, the Harrelson Group down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Ralph. I'm sorry, that's you. Greg is a national coach. Really great human being that knows what he's talking about, will help you with your business and grow your business. He's a national speaker as well. And Greg's going to be with us next week. With that said, I got a couple things for you, Ralph, really quickly. The first thing is a question. How do I help you grow your business?
Oh, that's great. I think that anybody's watching this, and this is great information. If you have opportunities for real estate that match anything that I'm talking about, you know, would reach out to me. If there's anything we can build on together, you know, you feel like, hey, I said something to the nerve and you have something to add to something I'm doing because you think that we can help each other, then let's do it. I think just, you know, hearing your experience, you helping me already, Dave, but just being around this network of people always helps. Awesome. Thank you. And last but not least, I know you were on 2 years ago, another hat. It's different. It's changed. It's a different color. We're going to have this hat. It was black before, right?
What's that?
It was black before, wasn't
black,
it?
red.
Yeah, I have it in my office.
Right. So this has been around a while. I love the color blue. So we've changed our logos to blues and everything else. Anyway, Ralph, stay on for a minute as we go out. Thanks so much for being on today. We'll see everybody next week. Hit it, Nelson.